I think one of the earliest memories that I have, I was 3 or 4 years old, and it's getting evening time, and I'm sitting on the kitchen floor playing with my toys. I remember kind of looking up through the screen door, and I saw this diamond-shaped light coming through the screen, but it looked absolutely magical to me. And my mom came in, and I said, "Mom, what's that?" And she said, "Well, that's a star." I can still remember because it impacted me. But I think a lot of people have those kinds of experiences. And I think it's those kind of experiences that set people off on their path of exploration and discovery. It's the approach that someone takes with any instrument, you know. I mean, if we could magically go back to Galileo's time and take the cheapest toy telescope made today,
he would see more stuff.
He would have seen a lot more stuff, a lot more detail, a lot better. You know, I think he would have been absolutely stunned at the quality. Now, somebody to help you is invaluable, you know, and that all that information that's been handed down over the last 400 years about astronomy is something that is easily accessible through the internet, through communities like membership in astronomy clubs, or just a friend that's into it. So
the coolest thing about what we do now is showing people for the first time through telescopes. A lot of people are blown away,
right?
Just absolutely stunned.
It's such a big deal to them.
My favorite thing is describing to people what the objects they're about to see are, and then ask their first reaction when they look through the telescope.
Mm-hmm. What do you hear? What have you heard?
Oh my God! Or
right.
There's no way that's real. Or this is unreal. There's no way that's
There's
real.
no way. Yeah.
They
right.
just can't believe it's true.
Right. That is really, I mean, when I need a recharge, if I do that, if I go to almost any street corner and I set up a telescope and we're looking at the moon or we're seeing Jupiter or Saturn or something like that, there's always somebody that will come up, sometimes someone of advanced age, you know, 60, 70, 80 years old, and they never in their lives have looked through a telescope, and they'll tell you, "I've always wanted to do this." And then they see Saturn's rings for the first time, and I've seen people cry at the eyepiece. Cry. And what's going through my head is I'm thinking, why did these people wait? What was going on that was so important that they couldn't spend, even if they didn't buy their own scope, why didn't they seek this out and get it done, you know? But awesome. I guess a lot of people put things on the back burner.
So Scott, we're standing on some very hallowed ground here.
Well, of course, we're standing here next to the 40-inch refractor. It's the most amazing refractor I've ever seen.
Well, not only that, but you're standing very close to the spot where Einstein stood to have his photograph taken here at the observatory on May 6, 1921.
Well, I'm really honored to be here. You know, now it's almost 95 years after that, right? The telescope now is being used for a regular visual public observing program.
That's correct.
And that's maybe the first time ever, is that right?
Well, there have been intermittent programs for the public over the years, very, very infrequent. Now we have a program that is many nights every month. It's available for public viewing.
Wow, so that's an amazing opportunity, I think, for a lot of people.
I can't help but notice that you have all Explore Scientific eyepieces here. You know, I love to see that, but how did you arrive at this decision to get these eyepieces? Because I didn't know that you had selected these.
No, you didn't. And I had done a fairly extensive survey of what was available on the market. When we decided to open the refractor to the public, we had to go through quite a conversion. It had been used photographically with a glass plate camera, film plate camera for many years, decades as a matter of fact. That had to be removed. We had to get a new focuser for the instrument. So along with that came the decision of what kind of eyepieces we were going to use.
I see.
I needed a range of focal lengths, different powers.
Right.
Because depending upon the evening with our seeing here in Wisconsin, we might have great seeing, we might not have such great seeing. So I needed a line, and I wanted to go with one manufacturer where we could switch out depending upon the evening. I also work with a lot of people who have never used a telescope before. So imagine that the very first time they look through a telescope happens to be the great refractor. And we want the great refractor to really perform well.
Sure.
So obviously the telescope is part of this equation, but the eyepiece is absolutely critical. It's paramount to making this a great experience for people.
But this telescope has a ton of focal length. It's like over 19,000 millimeters.
19,357 to be exact.
Okay. You know, these eyepieces, although they're longer focal length for like smaller amateur telescopes, but this is still quite a bit of power to start off with.
Right, and actually the lowest power I use, the 40 millimeter, produces 485 power with this focal length. It's an F19 system. So that's actually the lowest power that I use, and we go up from there.
What kind of objects do you typically look at from here?
Typically on the program, if the moon is visible, we'll start out with that nice bright object. Easy for people to focus on because I have to teach them how to focus the telescope. They have to be able to look through the eyepiece, understand what focus is. Then we spend a little time looking at lunar details, and usually moving on to some other solar system object. Hopefully we've got Saturn, Jupiter sometimes, you know, it depends upon the time of year, obviously.
I can just imagine the reaction these people have when they look at the instrument.
Spectacular.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I'm really, we're humbled and we're honored that these people are looking through our eyepieces, but I think that the experience, no matter what, has just got to be kind of life-changing for some of these people as well.
I think it is, especially when you're doing a public outreach program this extensive with a major instrument like this, and able to tell people about the history of the telescope. That this was Hubble's telescope for earning his PhD in 1917. It was Carl Sagan's telescope for earning his PhD in 1960. It's also the telescope that discovered the spiral structure of the Milky Way galaxy. George Ellery Hale used it in some of his monumental studies observing the sun. So we talk a little bit about that kind of history. We don't dwell on that,
Sure.
because it's an observation program, but we give people a feel for exactly the type of instrument that they're looking through. Very historic, still very noteworthy, very usable,
Right.
A great instrument that we brought back to life. So again, going back to the eyepieces, it was just extremely important that we have a good range of eyepieces to work with, and they're interchangeable with one of our other observing programs with our 24-inch reflector as well. So they're very versatile. So again, the eyepieces were extremely important to the overall experience for the observer, for the participant in our program. And the line from Explore Scientific was just, let's just put it this way, it was a no-brainer. Once I looked at all of what was available, and had tested some other brands, especially for power, to see how much power we were actually going to be able to use, because the telescope hadn't been used visually for many, many decades. So there was no one around who could really advise me as to what would work and what wouldn't. So I kind of had to discover that on my own.
Right.
So I used other brands that I had available just to see what powers would work, just to give me an idea. Then I wanted to go for a more premium eyepiece, something that I knew was going to give a great experience. Very sharp to the edge on these eyepieces. It's a great field of view. It's easy for people who have not observed in the past to be able to look into the eyepiece and see the object that I'm showing, the Ring Nebula, M13, the Great Globular in Hercules, easily splitting something like Albireo, a stunning object all onto its own, the Wild Duck Cluster, fabulous, sharp to the field,
Right.
the outer portion of it, pinpoint stars. It's just a great experience. And the performance of each one of the eyepieces that we've purchased has been above expectations. Wow. And has been, of course, my visitors don't really know the difference because they haven't looked through a bad eyepiece.
Sure.
They're looking through great eyepieces with a great telescope. So it's all about the presentation of the instrument.
Spoiled.
Well, yeah, they're automatically spoiled. As I have been saying, it's like learning how to drive with a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or something like that, equivalent. Starting out your observing, very first celestial observing with 40-inch refractor. Is a pretty big step for most people to take.
Again, I'm very honored. Our company's very honored to be part of this, and thanks very much.
You're welcome.
This is an incredible dark sky night. It is like being in a temple of stars. Earlier we were talking about what a small telescope could do. Well, I can tell you that I was able to look at a galaxy millions of light years away. And to see something like that and to really start exploring and start discovering things for yourself is really what changes you. It doesn't cost anything to get into astronomy, and in fact, probably going to cost nothing because you probably already have one of these in your garage or up in your attic right now. The experience that you're going to get when you come out under the dark skies and you explore with your eyes is going to change you forever. It's time to get out there and start exploring. It's time to make those discoveries for yourself.